Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions as we go through this webinar, please just type them into the questions box on your screen, and we'll be sure to get to those answered by the end. With that being said, I'm going to kick it over to Kyle Koerber, who is the COO at P3 Propane Safety.
Thank you, Emma. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, actually, depending on where you're located. Very excited today to talk about season. I think it's good timing, Cathodic. Wanted to thank David Foster for joining us today from Wilcox Energy. David's one of the principals there. So, David, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And Brent Cammett, who's the director of our safety training division.
Good afternoon, everybody.
So I think before, David, before we kick it off and get into Cathodic, we're very grateful of our relationship. I mean, man, we've worked together for a long time. I guess we're both getting old here. Not a dig on you, more of me, I guess. But what do you? I think with P3 we were talking about you. It's been probably, what was that, 2 years now that you guys have been on it?
Yeah, I think we're coming up on 3 years now. I could just give you a little background. We started in the propane business 15 years ago, and back then I was doing the sales, the installs, and all the paperwork, which, as everyone knows, in propane, there's a lot of paperwork. So we've been customers of Boston Environmental for a long time with the tank share program, and been talking to Kyle and excuse me, oh my gosh, Jerry. Kyle, Jerry O'Brien, I don't know why I forgot his name. We talked to him all the time. Anyway, for quite a few years, and we decided to go ahead with it about 2.5, 3 years ago. And we've been using P3 ever since. Fortunately, knock on wood, we haven't had to go to court or anything, but between the pictures and the safety sheets that we fill out, and now everything's on the tablets. So my guys have tablets, and they fill in the paperwork when they're there. Everything gets digitally downloaded. And if there's questions or anything that we have about a certain account, the pictures really make a difference, especially if there's a fire safety problem. If someone goes in and puts an air conditioning unit in after you installed your tank, you have a picture of it. So we're standing about 10 feet away from the tanks, taking a picture of the side of the house or wherever it is, and we're documenting everything. And it really helps because, as everyone knows, you're doing 2 or 3 jobs a day. You're not going to remember every job. So it's nice to have the P3. Once the learning curve is over with the tablets, with the guys, it really becomes second nature to them, and it gets rid of a lot of paperwork. So we've been using it for that, and we're going to continue. And we just started doing some of the cathodic protection. I think we have 69 tanks that are located on there, and we've only done about 4 or 5 cathodic protection tests, but we're starting to do that and keep track of those. So we're entering all that in, and that seems to be working fine. I asked one of my techs just yesterday actually, what he thought of the form. He said it was beautiful, nice and easy, asks all the pertinent information you need, and it documents it for you, including the readings of the anode bag. So take it from there.
That's a great intro. Thank you. Thanks so much. Brent, as we're starting to think about, I think my experience is everyone could probably be a little bit more dialed into cathodic. Some people just getting started, some people getting out there and retesting. It's that time of year. I want to start doing cathodic testing. Where do I start? What do I need? What tools should I have?
No, it's a good question. I mean, unfortunately in our industry, what happens is that this is one of those items that it's easy for it to go by the wayside. We're busy in the winter, and any of you that are in a northern climate where the ground freezes, obviously we can't do it that time of year. So again, it's something that's easy to fall on the back burner. That being said, your insurance providers want you to make sure this cathodic protection is done and completed. It is required per NFPA. And of course, the easiest way to get started is to start with a program like P3 and start down that. Not only is it ongoing training whenever you use the platform, but it's also going to remind you when you need to do those cathodics. And of course, NFPA has set out those timelines. As far as things you need, well, obviously you need the cathodic testing equipment. And then on top of that, obviously you need the knowledge or skill set and how to do it, which again, not a major in-depth task with a very little bit of guidance. You can do that. And again, at P3, we go over all that stuff, and Kyle's going to get into it here, but we also have categories such as mobile professor. So even if you only understand something, say 60, 70% of the way, it's going to help you get through the rest of that process, if that makes sense to everybody.
So I just brought up our mobile service. This is what the field team uses to do inspections in P3. Let's just step through a cathodic inspection here. So we try to make this intuitive. You know, it's all going to work the same. Select what you want to do. We're going to input our account number. Of course, we're integrated with a lot of back office software, so those are going to come right into P3. Select the customer, select the location. From there, we're going to bring in the container that we're going to need to inspect. You can see this is already located, so we're going to bring in that container. And now we're going to move forward with the initial container inspection. Brent, you want to step through this process here?
Absolutely. So we do have some terminology in here that I'll explain to some people in case they're unfamiliar. But of course, AG would be above ground container. UG is an underground container. But we also have above ground, underground. Not super common, but they do exist in the propane industry. So make sure you identify what the container is. And then, of course, the serial number of that container, which is going to be on the data plate on the container. Oftentimes now with newer containers, we do have a secondary data plate attached to a cable to the riser. So that way there we can find that information even if the dome is filled in. And then jump down to the size, whatever that may be. And remember, anything ASME is always going to be in water gallons or water capacity. And then manufacturer, whether it's quality steel, whatever the company is. And then the next category is super important. The owned by category often gets undocumented. And we've worked with clients that have spent tens of thousands of dollars on excavation because either the customer doesn't know who owns it or they assume they own it, but don't have any documentation and or no signature that, you know, stating who owns it. So then when that emergency situation happens, you know, because the tank rotted through and it's leaking, well, now you have an emergency, you need to get out there and rectify it. So make sure from day one you get that proper signature on who owns it, whether it's the homeowner or the business. So that way there you can be proactive in doing those follow-up inspections and God forbid emergency situations. Then of course you can see here it's asking about the tank percent, and you'll notice as Kyle goes through this, everything is a very simple drop-down menu. All you have to do is click it and boom, it tells you exactly what's going on. And then the tag number, if applicable, if you have one for that particular container. And then the tank installation date. We don't always know that, but you'll see next to it, it says optional. And that's because we understand, respect, and appreciate. Maybe you don't know the date that the container was installed. Maybe you're taking it over. But if you were installing it that day, then obviously put that information in there for future reference. And then we're going to jump into the other category, which is foundation. Some underground containers require some type of that by the local authority having jurisdiction. It may not be visible if it's a takeover. If there's one there, obviously document what it is, but a very simple language. If it's there and it's good, it's okay. And then the location. Here we're looking for that code compliant type of stuff. You know, is it the proper setbacks from the building, the property lines, sources of ignition, etc. And you can see Kyle there is showing you the technology behind it. And then what is the condition? And again, we're not looking for pretty, we're looking for, is it code compliant, okay, or obviously in an underground container situation, maybe it's not visible or the majority of it's not visible. And then the relief valve condition. On an underground tank, usually very simple, sits at the highest point on that underground container at the top of the riser. And this is a visual inspection you're doing to make sure the tines aren't broke, it's free of debris, etc. And then the relief valve manufacture date, again, etched in the side of that relief valve. You can gather that information. However, we have given you a not visible button because, again, I live in the real world. I do respect and appreciate. Sometimes they can be hard to see. Everybody can see I have these glasses on my face for a reason. Sometimes those little tiny dates on a relief valve are hard to come by. And then is it properly protected from, bugs and dirt and debris? Is that relief valve cap there? If it is, it's okay. And then of course we should do some type of a fittings leak test. Make sure we use our leak detector solution and spray it all over everything and make sure everything is good. And then last but not least, the year that the container was manufactured, which of course is going to be on the container itself. And that'll also help us for future inspections, etc. And after that, but determining whether or not when we get a bad cathodic read based on the age of the container, is it time to maybe retrofit an anode bag or is it time to dig it up and put in a new container? Does that make sense to everybody?
That sounds great, Brent. Yeah, so this is again our error recognition or self-auditing forms. If people are moving too quick, we're going to warn them. Here we do have that warning. We're not going to continue. We're providing better tools to help your field team get the documentation done right the first time. I'll turn this over to Brent in a second. One thing I'll note, and this hopefully is valuable for P3 clients that might be joining this call, what we're going to do here is we're going to pull up the last inspection. So we know that we're on periodic because this is pulling periodic forward. If it had confirmation here, you would know to move it forward to periodic. It's always going to show you the last selected inspection here for the last time. So yeah, Brent, maybe let's step through these fields.
Sure. So obviously the very first category is what day are you doing the cathodic inspection? So obviously you put in the date you're doing that. And then is the tank isolated? And of course, what we mean by that is some type of dielectric separation. Nowadays, we have all kinds of different things. Some of you that have been in the industry a long time remember in the old days, we only had dielectric unions, but now we have dielectric pigtails, dielectric shutoffs, dielectric regulators. So obviously identify if it's properly separated from that. And of course, a little further training, we go into why that's so important, whether or not you're overtasking the anode bags, etc. And then of course, the number of anodes that you put on that container. We do have a general rule of thumb or industry best practice, but some companies will go above and beyond that, especially if it's their investment in the ground, and they'll put more anode bags on that container. So that's why it's always good to identify how many there were when you do the installation or when you do the takeover on that container.
What's the standard, Brent? Is that 2 generally, or what do you see?
So on a 500-gallon tank, it would be 1 17-pound anode bag, and on a 1,000-gallon tank, it's typically 2 17-pound anode bags. But as I said a minute ago, I do have a client that when it's their investment in the ground, they will put more than that. They'll put 3 or 4 on a 1,000-gallon tank. Again, because it is with steel going up, the cost of containers, it is becoming a pretty big investment on your part as a company. So you want to protect it if it's cost effective, of course. And then, of course, the next category on the top right there would be the inspection type. And what that is going to be the 3 different categories that NFPA has rolled out. We're going to have the initial inspection, which due to weather and conditions and whatnot, they give us 0 to 6 months to do that very first or initial inspection, again, for time of year and what have you. And then we have the confirmation inspection, which is done between 12 and 18 months, again, giving you a 6-month window to fit in what you need to do. And then if both of those pass, you can then place it on a 36-month rotation. So that way they're doing the proper inspections when they're supposed to be done. And of course, P3 is going to let you know when that is coming up for inspection again. And then the next one will be the anode size, whether it's a 17-pound bag, which is the most common. But if you did get into a larger container, obviously the size of the anodes would go up. And then, of course, the anode type. Well, there's typically 3 different types. There's the regular magnesium alloy, there's the high potential, and then zinc bags if you live in a salty area and what have you. And then, of course, your 5 readings. A lot of you that are listening are probably saying 5. You usually only do 4. Well, the 4 readings would be for the extremities of the tank on either side of it. And then the fifth one, we like to get one where you can see the arrow is pointing right on top of the container in closest connection to the steel, because if your equipment is working properly, steel or bare steel should give you a reading of negative 0.50. So that way there you can help with troubleshoot and determine that your equipment is working properly and it's not a multimeter malfunction or a lead that's not connected properly or whatever the case may be. And then from there, well, what did we have to do? Did we have to retrofit an anode bag? Did we have to replace the container? Or did we have to do some type of dielectric separation? All of that would be part of your troubleshooting process as to bring those readings to where they need to be. And then, of course, you have a comment section there, which we strongly recommend on any forum, because again, technicians come into all kinds of unique situations out there in the field, and it's always good to communicate that back to the homeowner or the company, so that we know what to do. And of course, it helps with those negotiations or discussions around updates or repairs with that. And of course, through P3, you can also do a picture, right? Show the customer what's happening if it was an object that was obvious through photographs. And then once you're there, you can see here, Kyle's got some error recognition popping up, which I'll kick it back to him for.
So, yeah, this is going to run throughout P3. So we're auditing your readings, and we're finding they don't meet code requirements. We're going to flag the user and point them back to the applicable code. And maybe this is the case. And if this was in fact the case, we could say, retrofit needed. We're going to save and continue. And that's going to go all right into P3. In P3, I'm going to move over to our desktop site. We're going to see this in our reporting. So this is, for reports, we go to containers, cathodic protection tracking. We can see no inspection, current accounts, is service required. You can drill into these, and you can open up the actual documentation.
Yeah, Kyle, go to 27 Sunrise there. You can see the pictures also, the top one there. Yep. So these are the photographs that they've taken, and we noticed that one has a copper line to it. So this is an older tank, and you have to disconnect that copper line if it doesn't have the separation that Brent was talking about. The what do you call it, Greg?
Dielectric union.
Yeah, the dielectric
separation. Yeah.
Scale. So make sure if you have an older tank that you're separating those. You have to disconnect the line if there is not one there, or put a dielectric union in to make sure when you test that will give you the correct reading. If you don't and you go with the copper, you're not going to get correct reading.
Yeah, great notes too by James. This was James, right, that did this?
Yeah.
Great notes here. When you upload pictures, you can also include a note on it. I think that's always great to see when our field team does that. They're really taking an extra step. So you're going to be able to see your photos. You can drill in, and you can open up the actual documentation completed. What percent of you're really building your customer base? Like what percent, David, of your customers are looking for an underground container? Like how often are you seeing that?
So most of them are with builders, of course. New houses are pretty much all going underground. And then if you have a customer that's, a lot of people are putting in generators now, and they're putting in, if they have a larger home, they're going to need a larger tank, so they're burying them. I can't really give you a percentage. The percentage is still above ground.
Yep.
By far, but depending on the area you're in and the size of the house and the load on the BTUs for the tank, so you want a larger tank, they'll go underground or above ground also. But the bulk of them are above ground.
Gotcha.
Small amount, still underground, but it's getting more and more popular, especially with new homes. And if you're working with a builder, you're usually going underground.
Do you do customer owned installations as well, or are they all company
Or
owned?
in-ground tanks, because we don't want to get involved in the liens, the UCC liens you're supposed to put on customers' houses. So they're mostly tank homeowner owned for us. If they do, we will lease them to them, but we tell them we're putting a UCC lien on there, because if you don't, when they sell the property, everything on that property goes with it. If you don't have a lien on that, you lose the tank.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Wow.
could be expensive. And a lien's not that expensive.
Brent, we were talking yesterday about different types of anodes and that selection. You had a little bit of guidance for that as well, correct?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, depending on the installation and of course, cost of the anode bag, there's the magnesium alloy, which is very common. Again, most common size and average residential and small commercial is 17 pound. And that one is a combination of about 75% magnesium alloy and then a mixture of chemicals for the other 25%. And then we have the high potential, which is usually 75% magnesium alloy and 25% zinc. And then for any customers that are listening to me now that are anywhere with salt air or salt water table, we use a zinc bag because that helps with the protection on the corrosion factor from the salt water and or air. So that's what those are the three most common types of bags that are out there in the industry. And most likely your supply house has all three in stock ready to go. So just, adjust per cost and installation parameters for what you need.
Great. Well, that's a snapshot of cathodic inspections, how you can enter the reading into P3, how you can use the reporting, some experience of our clients using it. Thank you, David. We try to keep these to 20 minutes. So I think at this point we can open it up to questions that the audience might have.
Yeah, it looks like somebody did have a question. Does poly pipe cover the separation rule?
It does. It's actually a great question. So poly, of course, would be that separation. What we're worried about is, I always like to explain it as though the anode bag is sacrificing itself. It is essentially pulling the rust away from the container. So if we have that tied to a metallic underground line, such as copper, and then 60 feet of black iron pipe in the customer's basement, you're overtasking that anode bag. And of course, we don't need to protect the 60 feet of pipe in the customer's basement. So therefore, that's where that dielectric separation comes in, whether it be with poly pipe, to your point, or whether it be with a dielectric pigtail or dielectric union regulator, shut off, whatever the case may be. But yes, great question. Word of caution, remember, do not attach the tracer wire with bare ends on either end, because you would have done away with that electrical separation if you use the plastic pipe. But great question, and yes, poly is going to give you that electrical separation.
And then another question that we have is, can you email the PDF to the customer, and how many email addresses can you send the PDF to?
So we have in our mobile service, in P3's mobile service, there are a number of inspections that automatically send emails: safety, interruption of service, customer agreement. And if you had to go back, just get a customer signature through duty to warn, those are all customer facing. So those are going to create emails automatically. Other ones like plant inspection, crane inspection, and also containers do not automatically email, because our experience is that, well, that might be some of our clients' policy. It's not all of them for this to be a customer facing document. So you would simply need to go to P3 and open the PDF and then save it, and then you could send that out. So for our inspections that you can email, it is pretty much unlimited, I think, the number of email addresses that you can add.
And then another question we have is, will P3 alert me in 3 years when an inspection is due again?
Yeah, you're going to be able to see that in your, you go to your reports, containers, cathodic inspection tracking. You're going to see that in your not current category. So this is going to be dynamic as you need to get back out there and address things.
Kyle, I think they're looking for dummy alert like I asked earlier. In other
We're
words, I
starting
don't have to go and look for it.
get into that. We're starting to get into that with emailable reports. We've done that for field work as well as for bulk plants. Generally available for multi-location marketers, but something that we're going to make available to single locations. I think David, probably maybe it would make sense to for us to talk about that a little bit more, because from my perspective, it'd probably make more sense to have it go out once a month rather than getting an email. It could be a lot of volume if you have a lot of underground containers and got an email when you need to get back out and do every single one.
Yeah, right now I can go in and just look at that report, and on the left that you had just brought up, it's going to say you have 1 or 2 or 3 that are notified. So if I just go in once a week, or I'm in it every day anyway, and just look at it, it will notify me that someone's up, and I just look into it.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just up to me now, because basically in P3 every day, so I just got to remember to go look this up, which is fairly easy to do.
That is, we couldn't have said it any better, David. Just log into P3 every day, everyone. That's gonna
We are.
do it.
Yeah, that way you don't get 1,000 emails like you said before, so that's easy enough.
One thing I saw, Brent, too, is how big of a red flag is it if you have an underground container and there's dead grass above it? Yeah, I've had a couple of clients kind of point that out lately.
Yeah, great question. It's a telltale sign that you have something going underground, such as a propane leak. It steals the oxygen from the air, so therefore the vegetation doesn't grow. And you see that the more manicured the lawn or yard is, obviously the more obvious that's going to be. And so, yeah, if you see a beautiful lawn and there's a big yellow patch of grass, you have an underground problem. Definitely need to do some more investigation.
And it looks like the last question we have is it okay to update old paper copies of underground tank testing we have on file to P3 to bring it into the software?
Yeah, you can, in the desktop site, you have the ability to enter your paper forms. So you can do enter, and you can do your cathodic protection data. It's going to work just like the mobile service. So if you got old paperwork you want to get in here, can go right in through the desktop site, and we can help accommodate that if there are additional questions. Sounds like that was it, Emma?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, David, we're very grateful for your time. Thank you so much. We look forward to working with you for years to come. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Brent, for joining, and thanks for everyone for tuning in. We'll be back shortly with another topic, and if you have any questions, please let us know. Thanks, everyone.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.